All right, so you've just binged a K-drama or had a K-pop track on repeat, and suddenly you're thinking, man, I need to learn Korean. We've all been there, right? But here's the real question for us today. How do we actually take that massive global cultural obsession and turn it into a solid, profitable EdTech business? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're laying out a totally actionable, data-driven playbook for taking K-culture EdTech global straight from the latest industry strategies. So here's our game plan. We're going to cover global opportunities, data-driven market selection, breaking through the wall of culture, dodging the legal landmines of copyright and data protection, and finally, figuring out the optimal revenue models. Jumping right into part one, global opportunities, way beyond just the K-pop phenomenon. It all starts with this undeniable, almost invisible emotional link that pop culture creates. But in EdTech, we've got to forge that link into actual paying demand. Get this, there's an explosive 25% annual growth rate for Korean learning in Southeast Asia alone. 25%. The market is literally starving for this. We're also seeing a massive surge in the Middle East for digital education models. The opportunity? Absolutely undeniable. But as you probably know, the execution is where the wheels usually fall off. Just think about this quote for a second. Why are millions learning Korean when BTS isn't the one teaching it? It hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The cultural hook is already there. The artists did the heavy lifting. But our job in this explainer is figuring out how to wrangle that invisible asset into a structured, scalable system. Because let's be real, banking on people buying an app just because they like K-pop, that's a total trap. Moving on to part two, data-driven market selection. It's all about matching your product to the actual infrastructure. So how do you actually pick the right country? You have to be ruthlessly analytical with your data. There are four main criteria here, but you really need to zero in on market growth and digital infrastructure. That is your bread and butter. Who cares if a country has incredible cultural affinity if their internet can't even load your program, right? You have to prioritize these metrics based exactly on what your specific tech demands. Let's look at a real-world reality check. There was this company that tried to push a high-end virtual reality product to U.S. public schools to teach traditional culture, and it absolutely tanked. Not because the tech was bad, but because it completely mismatched local educational policies. Now, flip that and look at the Philippines. The internet might be a bit spotty, sure, but mobile penetration is through the roof, and K-dramas are huge. By pivoting to a low-data mobile app teaching drama quotes, you're perfectly aligning the product with the actual local infrastructure. It's a game changer. Okay, part three, the wall of culture and localization. Let's talk about overcoming the translation trap. So you've picked your market using hard data. Awesome. But now you hit a massive wall. And spoiler alert, it's not just language, it's culture. AI translation is great today, but it translates words, not context. Think about the traditional holiday food songpyeon. If you just literally translate that as Korean rice cake, you've stripped away like 90% of what makes it special. The family ties, the harvest festival, the wishes, poof, gone. This is why systemic AI localization is absolutely crucial. You have to train your AI to inject that cultural soul back in. Maybe localizing it as Thanksgiving pie with a wish inside. That's how your product actually survives globally. And what happens when things get really abstract? Take the Korean concept of nunchi, for example. You can't just stereotype it. To teach a complex, deeply ingrained concept like this globally, you have to break it down into distinct, teachable behavioral traits. So you split it into the positive stuff like situational awareness and empathy, and the negative stuff like social anxiety and pressure. Suddenly, it's not an isolating cultural quirk, it's a universal, teachable social skill. You also have to remember that localization literally changes the classroom experience. Look at the traditional game Yutnori. In Korea, an activity based on group roles and community cooperation is a slam dunk. But drop that exact same group activity into a highly individualistic, debate-driven school culture overseas, it's probably going to flop. You might have to flip the whole script and turn it into a solo analytical task, like having students crunch the mathematical probabilities of the game instead. So, how do you know if your AI actually nailed the localization? Honestly, never blindly trust the machine. A huge takeaway is using a back translation loop. When you take the AI's English output and translate it back to the original language, you uncover some pretty hilarious and totally fatal blind spots. Like, testing has shown AI absolutely butchers cultural humor and dad jokes. It's a great reminder that human cultural experts absolutely must be your final gatekeepers. All right, moving to part four. This is the big one. Copyright and data protection, the hidden legal minefield of global expansion. Let's crack open the scariest black box of exporting EdTech. Ask yourself this: can you safely sell an educational app featuring an AI-generated image of a traditional Hanok house to schools in the US or Europe? The really terrifying answer is probably not. You could be staring down the barrel of massive retroactive copyright infringement lawsuits, all because of the hidden original data that the AI was trained on. And here's the harsh truth: you simply cannot patch these legal holes after your product launches. You have to build the armor from day one. Step 1. Strictly use commercially licensed or open source assets to protect against those copyright traps. Step 2. If you're even thinking about Europe, you must implement GDPR-compliant data minimization at the very start of your planning phase. Baking privacy into the core of your tech from the jump is literally the only way to save yourself from business-ending fines down the road. Which brings us to part 5, finding the optimal revenue model. Time to talk about the revenue engine. Okay, so your app is legally bulletproof and culturally perfectly attuned. But why would anyone actually open their wallet for it? You have to pick a model that fits the local vibe. Look at how shifting your target audience changes the whole game. If you go after budget-strapped schools with a B2B freemium model, sure, you'll get users easily, but your conversion to paid is going to be notoriously awful. But pivot to a B2C subscription model aimed at enthusiastic parents who really want that cultural education for their kids. You face a higher initial barrier, but the long-term retention is incredible. Alternatively, a licensing B2B2C model is fantastic for piggybacking off established local publishers, so you don't have to build your own sales force. It's all about matching the model to the local market reality. And that leads us perfectly into our conclusion: the one-page strategic blueprint. We've covered a ton of ground today, but if you want to actually pull this off globally, you have to distill your grand vision down into 4 rock-solid pillars. Number 1, what is your data-backed target country? 2, how are you localizing beyond just basic translation? 3, what are your day 1 legal and GDPR countermeasures? And 4, which tested revenue model actually makes sense there? Doing this takes you from a fuzzy, vague dream of exporting culture straight into a hard, actionable business reality. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. As you look to take your own cultural product global, ask yourself, what is the true and visible core value you're trying to teach? And more importantly, how are you going to adapt it so it's globally understood, legally safe, and highly profitable without ever stripping away its original soul? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing and keep building.